Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new video on the Whimsicast. Today we have a bit of a different video. We're doing an opening of a 2010 World Championship deck. This is Power Cottonweed, played by Yuka Furusawa, to a junior winning placement at the 2010 World Championships. I've been buying these decks lately, and I figured why not? If they're sealed, I'll just open them on the channel. That way we have something to show of it. It's not very often you're going to see someone opening up a 2010 Worlds deck, much less someone who knows about the format opening up the 2010 Worlds deck. So I get to talk a little bit about the deck, do a deck profile, all that stuff, and talk about the unique things that make it what it is. This is actually the last year they used this kind of packaging, which is kind of cool. This small box type, which I prefer, you know, save the environment a little bit. From then on, they would use this bigger packaging. This is a 2011 World Championship deck box that I've opened, so you kind of see that they changed the packaging there, though I do really like the 2011 World Championship decks in the way that the packaging looks. So let's get right into it. This packaging is pretty beat up. You know, it's been sitting in probably like a warehouse for 10 years, just ordered it off eBay. I am hunting down the 4 2010 Worlds decks. Probably won't be able to get the others sealed though, because, you know, nowadays sealed stuff, not cheap. So breaking the seal, I apologize to all the sealed collectors out there, but this one's in pretty bad shape anyway, so I hope you'll forgive me. There it is. So, it comes with the little deck box here. Obviously, these are pretty horrible, so I don't recommend using them. They're just cardboard, but it looks really cool, so I'm going to keep this safe in my closet. And it comes with a little booklet here. We have Hawaii, the Big Island. This is where it was hosted in the year 2010. These are fully scanned and available on PTCG. I believe PTCG Legends has them, so just shows here the brackets and which people came out on top. Funny thing in the seniors bracket here, I believe this is Jay Lesage, won the tournament without playing Bronzong in his SP deck, if I remember correctly, which is quite crazy. Yeah, so that is neat. Looking at Yuka herself, who was 11 when she won this tournament. She would be 24 now, so Yuka would actually be a master, not a junior anymore. And just talking about some of the other notable players. Sadly, that Jay Lesage list did not get printed because the World's winner in the Masters division was also a Lux Chomp list, so his Lux Chomp took priority. But yes, there is no Bronzong in Jay Lesage's list, which is kind of crazy to think about because Bronzong is like in every list. So that is just going through, talking about some of the lists. Frank Diaz's Kurskar list, the Yuta Kamatsuda's winning Lux Chomp list, just talking about some of the big lists at the tournament. So I'm going to be keeping this in my closet as well. Might as well preserve history, right? We have our two decks, two sides of the deck here. Comes with a little plastic insert to keep it together. And here we go. So, take that off. I believe it's probably just in random order if I had to guess. And nope, it looks like it is relatively, it's got some sort of sorting pattern to it because cards are kept together. So, we're going to be able to lay this out nicely. Just kind of take a look at the cards before I explain a little bit about Jumpluff. And I'm going to get these sleeved up in a minute. So you'll see a cut when I feel like it, but basically, Jumpluff is a cheese deck, for lack of a better words. Not to be mean to the deck in specific, but Jumpluff is a deck that tries to win the game before the opponent has a chance to mount their own strategy, which back in the day was actually quite successful at that. Jumpluff was regarded as a good deck by a lot of players, and part of that is to do with the time rules in the era where games would be won if you were up on prizes when time was called. So a deck like Jumpluff that can just easily take prizes is going to have an advantage against decks that take longer to set up. This is changed nowadays where this deck is more of a tier 3 deck. It can still win games and win events, but it has suffered over time, and that is because the format has changed to favor decks that are more setup oriented and rely on things like Trainer and Power Lock, which Jumpluff does not deal as well with. These setup decks also start the game with Spirit Tomb, which Trainer locks Jumpluff for its start, so it loses its strength as a speed deck if it can't get out going fast. So we have all the pieces here. You're going to see a cut in the camera because I'm going to go sleeve them up in these beautiful katanas. So yeah, you'll see a cut. I'm just going to be doing it. So the next part of this video is actually slightly off-cut with the deck profile. You'll still be able to see all the cards, just the bottoms of the cards on the bottom row will be missing. Just a camera angle issue, nothing I can really do about it. Alrighty, so we have the deck all sleeved up in these beautiful katana sleeves. Katanas are my absolute favorite sleeves, and I should get sponsored someday by Ultimate Guard. That'd be really cool. Anyway, let's get right into the deck list. We start off with 4 copies of Hop-Up here. You can see there's a 3-1 split. The art on the Hard Gold Silver one is much better, so I guess that it is. I had to run 3 of that for the art. Just kidding, obviously. They're really the same, but honestly, I prefer the Hop-Up from Secret Wonders, if you're going to ask me. The ×2 weakness can matter in some situations if you do have a damage boosting tool on the Hop-Up, which this deck does have. But the main thing about the Secret Wonders Hop-Up is that it has the Cottonweed Pokebody, which, if it has any grass energy attached to it, the retreat cost of Hop-Up is 0. In my Jumpluff list, I do not play this list for Jumpluff, this is just for collecting purposes I'm owning this. In my list there's a Spirit Tomb in here, and you want to be able to retreat into that Spirit Tomb while keeping the energy. Well, this one right here, if you retreat, you'd lose the energy, or you'd have to use Bounce and waste your attack for the turn when you want to use Spirit Tomb's attack. So this is the better Hop-Up from retrospect, but this list plays a 3-1 split. It was of the time, and it's not like there is a big difference considering that you don't play the Spirit Tomb in here, so you're not too worried about that. Then we have 3 copies of Skip Bloom. It's playing pretty heavily into the Skip Bloom Stage 1 because of you having the Broken Time Space in here. Cotton Balloon is why you play it over the one from Hard Gold Silver, which is really bad. Cotton Balloon says, if Skip Bloom has any grass energy attached to it, each of its opponent's attacks done to Skip Bloom are reduced by 20 from your opponent's evolved Pokemon. Sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful. So, you know, it can help in the mirror, it can help against Gardevoir, which would usually do 60 damage, take the knockout. Gengar would usually do 60 damage, take the knockout. Not ideal. If you're using this, you're probably not doing great, but it is something. U-turn does 20, switch just Skip Bloom with one of your bench, not too bad. Really low HP on this guy though, so not great, but it's something. Then we have 4 copies of Jumpluff here. This is the main attacker of the deck. Really nice artwork on this. It's really sad that the Skip Bloom wasn't better, so that you can't play the whole art line from Hard Gold Silver drawn by Sui, but I guess we have to take what we got. Jumpluff has the mass attack, and that's the main attack here. Just 10 for each number of Pokemon in play, both your and your opponents. So if each board is filled, you're going to do 120. Good opponents are obviously not going to fill their board, allow you to do that max damage on your terms. So a lot of times you're just going to be hitting for like 90 to 100, and then adding damage buffs to it. Leaf Guard also really good for 1 grass energy. 30, and any damage done to Jumpluff during your opponent's next turn is reduced by 30. So really good if you can take a knockout with Leaf Guard and then protect Jumpluff from getting knocked out in return. That's really strong. So you definitely use Leaf Guard a lot more than you may think, even though Mass Tech is the bread and butter of this deck. Then we have 3 copies of Baltoy. So Baltoy here, just a evolution into Claydol. Does have a really good attack and Psychic Balance that you can use though. If you have less cards in your hand than your opponent, draw cards until you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. So if you have absolutely nothing else, Psychic Balance can get you out in a pinch. But really, it's just here to evolve into Claydol. Let's straighten these out a little. So, Claydol here is 3 copies. Nowadays, most decks would choose to play 2, but 3 pretty much worked well for her, getting that Jumpluff strategy out early. Claydol's here for Cosmic Power. Once during your turn, you may choose up to 2 cards from your hand, put them on the bottom of your deck, then draw until you have 6 in hand. Easily the best draw Pokemon ever printed. Without question, just unbelievably good. Allows you to draw, and you can use multiple Cosmic Powers per turn. So you're going to be able to chain Jumpluffs every single turn, no matter what. You will not whiff Jumpluffs with this deck. There we go. Unless you're under Power Lock, of course. Then we have 4 copies of Unknown R. this is unique to this deck. It's not something I would choose to play, but it works well with this deck's specific build. Unknown R is the retire Pokepower once during your turn. If Unknown R is on your bench, you may discard Unknown R and all cards attached to it, then draw a card. If you played with the Unknown from Ancient Origins back in the day with Vespiquen, it's the same kind of thing going on here. Drawing a card is good. Ultimately, though, this card is not great. SP decks can take advantage of this by spraying if you're relying on this to draw. If you start this in the active spot, which you're going to probably do a fair bit, you play 4 copies, so it's going to get stuck there. You have to find a way to retreat it using like Unknown Q or an energy, which can just end up really awkward just to discard this guy. So not a huge fan of this card. It's in this deck because of the supporter choices it uses, but personally I would not play it in my own list. Yeah, there we go. Not disparaging the list or anything, it's just my personal taste from playing 2010. Then we have 2 copies of Uxie, the other best draw Pokemon of all time, with the setup Pokepower. When you play Uxie from your hand into your bench, draw until you have 7 in hand. So, more powerful draw than Claydol in the amount of cards it can draw up to. Claydol obviously can be used every turn, and can put cards to the bottom of the deck, being able to keep cards for later and draw more because you're thinning your hand down. Really good though, and it's also got Psychic Restore, which you can use and probably will use in a fair bit of games. 20 damage for 1 colorless. You may put Uxie and all cards attached on the bottom of your deck. If you can use this to take a knockout, or if you can just clear Uxie in a matchup where you don't want it on your field, then Psychic Restore is pretty good. So, Uxie, pretty good. 2 copies. Makes sense. I would run 1, but 2 is pretty good in a hyper aggro deck. You really can't argue with 2. Then we have 1 copy of Unknown Q. I mentioned this earlier. It has the quick Pokepower. Once during your turn, if Unknown Q is on your bench, you may discard all cards attached to Unknown Q and attach it to one of your Pokemon in play. That Pokemon pays colorless less to retreat. Ideally, you really want to get this on like a Uxie, something that is going to retreat for free the whole game, stay in play, rather than like an Unknown, which you're going to discard from play with the retire Pokepower. But, you know, Unknown Q's there. Also, if you get Claydol trapped in the active, which is going to happen quite a lot in this deck, you can potentially get out of it by attaching an energy and using Unknown Q, then retreating for 1 colorless energy. Hidden Power, 20 for 1. I've won games with this before. I've lost games with this before. The attack exists, and it actually kills an opposing Unknown Q if your opponent starts that. So if you get an Unknown Q mirror, whoever attacks into it first wins. So, kind of crazy. Then we have Crobat G here. It is the Flash by Pokepower. Once during your turn, when you put Crobat G from your hand onto your bench, you may place 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So, really, really good. Get some damage on the field, allows you to hit the bench as well. Biggest thing that I don't like about this deck with Crobat is there's no way to reuse it. A lot of Jumpluff lists nowadays, not the one I used personally, but a lot of Jumpluff lists nowadays are going to play Poketurn, which allows you to put one of your Pokemon SP and all cards attached to it in play, allowing you to reuse that Crobat. So it's not just a bench liability once it's stuck in field. You can't take it off field like Uxie or Unknown Q and R, and it's not providing you every turn effect like Claydol, so it really is like the most dead card in the deck. Once it's used, it's gone. If you start it, it is worthless for the rest of the game. So a lot of lists play Poketurn, and they play Luxray GL Level X, which is also a gusting card. That's another thing that I don't love about this list particularly, and it's why it's not able to stand up to Spiritomb decks, is because it can't gust around Pokemon, meaning that your opponent can also just keep a damaged Pokemon. If you hit a Pokemon for like 110 damage, they can just retreat it to the bench and not promote it the rest of the game. And, you know, if Crobat's not getting the knockout on the bench, then it will just be safe for the rest of the game. So, a few issues with this list. Just going to mention that, but obviously, someone's a world champion, and that's not me. Anyway, onto the supporter. We have 4 copies of Pokemon Collector here. This is why Unknown R is in the deck, is because of Pokemon Collector. Search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon, show them to your opponent, and put them into your hand. Really, really, really powerful card. Ideally, you'd want to play more of the next card in a Jumpluff deck, just because finding energy is good, but with this case, in this deck, finding basic Pokemon can sometimes be better, because you're going to want to find these Unknown Rs. Once your Pokemon Collector gets you your Baltoys and your Hoppdips and your Unknown Q if need be, you're going to want to use it to find Unknown R, so you can kind of drawing. It helps Pokemon Collector be less of a dead card, where a lot of times Pokemon Collector is a dead card in the mid to late game with these decks. Next up we have 3 copies of Roseanne Research, my favorite supporter in the format. Search your deck for up to 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon and basic energy. Show them to your opponent, put them into your hand. This is my favorite supporter for all these evolution decks. Finding energy is very good. This deck does play a very low amount of energy, so being able to find them is really strong. Personally, in my list, I play 4 Roseannes and no Collector, because Collector is just not needed if you're not using Unknown R. But Roseanne's still really good. 3 copies. I mean, it's a little overkill with the basic search, but hopefully it just works out, right? Then we have 2 copies of Judge. Each player shuffles their hand to the deck and draws 4, so you're going to want to disrupt your opponent. This deck wants to, like I said, win before the opponent gets their strategy up and going, so if you can disrupt your opponent's hand and prevent them from getting going, a lot of decks like Gyarados and SP or Winter rely on big hands to set up their strategies, and if you can just disrupt that over and over. This list only plays 2 Judge, mine plays 3, so you see a little bit of discrepancy there, but you can still prevent your opponent from hopefully catching back up and stopping your advance. And we have 1 copy of Bebe. This is definitely my biggest criticism of this deck. Only 1 copy of Bebe. Choose a card from your hand and put it on top of your deck, then search your deck for a Pokemon. To modern players, this card might seem incredibly weak, but in the context of this format, it is arguably the single best supporter. It is basically in every single deck. I can't think of a single deck that doesn't play Bebe. And one of the things that this deck does struggle with that I said is Trainer Lock. And Bebe being your only out searching evolutions in the deck is actually just really, really tough. So, frankly, I don't want to be mean to the deck, but if your opponent starts a Spiritomb and you have no way to find Bebe or just have it in hand turn 1, you're going to probably have a miserable game. That's just the truth of it. Bebe and only 1 copy is very, very, very low, considering this deck's already prone to Trainer Lock, but this deck is kind of all gas, no brakes. It's just saying that Trainer Lock doesn't exist and it can't hurt me. Speaking of trainers, let's get into that. 4 copies of Pokemon Communication. This seems about right. There's a certain other search card in here as well, I believe. But Pokemon Communication is very good. Choose a Pokemon from your hand and show it to your opponent, put it on top of your deck, then search your deck for another Pokemon. You don't have to search another one, you can also just find the same one. Obviously being able to search your evolutions here is really good. Collector for 2 Pokemon you need, 1 you don't, and then Pokemon Communication, the one you don't back in, get a Pokemon you want. That's an evolution, not a basic. You can kind of see how this works. Again, because this deck only plays 1 evolution search outside of trainers, you're going to get hit pretty hard by item lock, but just pretend it doesn't exist, and maybe your day will be a little bit better. 3 copies of Plus Power. You attach it to your active Pokemon, and it does, your attacks do 10 more damage to the defending Pokemon during that turn, so this is just a 10 damage buff for your Jumpluff to do more damage. Jumpluff's going to be wanting to take 1-hit KOs on the opponent, but the opponent's not going to allow you to take 1-hit KOs. They're going to limit their bench. That way you have to struggle and you have to find these Plus Powers for the knockout. Then we have 3 copies of Rare Candy. Rare Candy's still good. We do have Broken Time Space in here, but you always want Rare Candy in Stage 2 decks no matter what. Rare Candy is different from the Rare Candy you know nowadays because this Rare Candy can be played during your first turn if you go second, and the turn a Pokemon that comes into play. You choose one of your basic Pokemon in play. If you have a Stage 1 or Stage 2 card in your hand, yes, you can evolve into a Stage 1 with Rare Candy. This old Rare Candy is broken. Then you put that card onto the basic Pokemon. This counts as evolving it. So you cannot use a Stage 1 into a Stage 2, but you can do, like, I can put a Baltoy down and then instantly Rare Candy Claydol if it is not the first turn going first, because going first you can't play any trainers. Just really, really, really strong card. You gotta run at least 3 in like any kind of speed deck, even with Broken Time Space. You gotta run Rare Candy. Then we have 2 copies of Warp Point. So your opponent switches one of his or her Pokemon with their active, and then you switch. So it's like Escape Rope if you play nowadays. So Warp Point, really, really good. Is the only way in this deck to gust. Like I said, that's very worrying. Lists nowadays will probably choose to include the Luxray GL level X for that reason. You need to be able to gust around Spiritombs and finish off targets on the bench. I have won games against Jumpluff before, just because I'll have a Pokemon damaged on the bench and they just can't touch it, because Warp Point gives your opponent the option. Warp Point's still very good. You want Warp Point in any Claydol deck, basically, just so you don't get stuck, but just keep in mind that it can be very troubling, just because this is your only gust card, and you can't move Spiritomb with Warp Point because Spiritomb locks trainers. Then we have 2 copies of Night Maintenance. Shuffle 3 in any combination of Pokemon and Basic Energy from this round in your deck. Same as Super Rod if you play nowadays. Just really good for shuffling Pokemon back in. You're going to be losing a lot of Pokemon in this deck, so 2 copies feels perfect. Don't want to play 4. I know I saw like the 2009 Beedrill deck play 4. Don't think you need 4, especially with Trainer Lock in this format, but 2 is good enough. Then we have Luxury Ball, 1 copy. Search your deck for a Pokemon, excluding Level X, and put it into your hand. You can't play this card if any other Luxury Balls are in your discard pile, so that's why we only play 1 copy, is because after the first one's used, they're completely dead. But as you can see, there are no Level X's in this deck, so Luxury Ball searches any single Pokemon from this deck. Really, really good card. They should bring something like this back for Rulebox Pokemon. Then we have Expert Belt. We have 1 copy of Expert Belt, just gonna place that here. This is a little bit of a unique thing. Not all Jumpluff lists, in fact most Jumpluff lists nowadays don't play Expert Belt, but I've seen this card work in Jumpluff, so I can't say it's bad. It does its job when it needs to. Essentially you're going to want to use this to either take a big knockout and just win the game, or take a knockout that's going to stop your opponent from playing the game. Because if you give up 2 prizes with the Jumpluff, you're probably losing the game, so be careful here. What do I mean by that? Expert Belt, when it's attached to a Pokemon that gets 20 plus HP, 20 plus damage to the opponent's active, but when that Pokemon is knocked out, it gives up an additional prize card. So even with that plus 20 HP, 110 is not a ton in this format. Plenty of Pokemon are capable of either dealing 110 or stopping you from going to the bench and hiding after being hit for like 80 damage. Something like a Curse Card deck will easily be able to finish that KO either with the Curse Pokepower or the Shadow Room attack. And Gardevoir can use Bring Down to take 2 prizes in that deck. So there's plenty of ways to finish off a Jumpluff even if it lives a hit. So ultimately the goal with this Expert Belt in this deck is that you just want to use this 20 plus damage in a pinch to take a big knockout that's either going to win the game or stop your opponent from ever winning the game. Then we have 3 copies of Broken Time Space. This stadium is broken, as the name may suggest. Each player may evolve Pokemon he or she played during that turn. So, turn 1 going second without even a rare candy in hand. If I have Hoppip, Skiploom, and Jumpluff in my hand, I can go Hoppip, Skiploom, Jumpluff, just like that. And that's the strength of this deck, is it takes advantage of Broken Time Space and rare candy to evolve instantly, trying to get that turn 1 knockout every single game. This deck, like I said, all gas, no breaks, no consideration for item lock, and the slightest. It doesn't exist, trust me, it just doesn't exist. You'll never play item lock, certainly not like 3 of the 4 best decks in this format playing item lock. Nope, not a thing. So, Broken Time Space is really good, allows you to evolve your Pokemon. There's not a lot of counter stadiums in this format, so 3 copies means that you will basically always win the Stadium War against the only other relevant meta stadium, Moonlight Stadium, which is only played in 2 copies in most decks that play it. And then we have 6 Grass Energy. To finish off the list, I like that it's playing the Celebi Energy from Harkle Silver Base. Big fan of those. It also technically adds to my Celebi collection, which is probably over 300 cards at this point. I have a lot of Celebis. 6 Grass Energy means that you can find them pretty consistently with the help of Claydol and, more importantly, Roseanne's Research. Playing only 3 Roseanne's Research means you sometimes may whiff. I've played several times against this deck before, and that's basically just how it loses games, because it whiffs energy, which is a little sad to hear, but not the favorite way to lose a game, whiffing energy, especially when you're a 1 energy attacker, but yeah, it does happen. 6 copies though is pretty right. Ultimately, it's just because it only runs 3 Roseannes, and it runs a bit of an awkward all speed without consideration for finding the pieces that are a little bit harder to find. So that is the 2010 World Jumpluff deck. Hopefully you enjoyed me giving a bit of my commentary on the deck, being someone that actually plays the format. I've just realized the camera's been a little tilted this whole time, right? But whatever, it works. You guys saw the deck. This is Jumpluff from 2010 Worlds. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.